Hey guys, really close to getting the Honda going, all right? All I gotta do is reinstall my carburetor and throttle linkage. But before I do that, I have to make some throttle cable ends. If you already know how to do that, we'll see you next time. If you don't know how to do that, well, we're here to help. All right, so since working on the Honda, I've gone through about 3 different carburetor setups at this point, all right? Originally had the stock carburetor on there, but it was a mess. Had bad needles, bad jets, just couldn't get the car running, all right? Then I went and got a cheap Amazon like S&S knockoff, you know, like you would see on a Harley Davidson. We were able to get the car running, but it ran like shit. Couldn't really get it idling great, you know, major fuel delivery issues. The carburetor is basically too fat for the motor. So we abandoned that and tried the same theory out on a Mikuni carburetor, and the car ran a lot better, but then we had issues with fuel overflow and throttle linkage problems. I mean, basically every time we've changed out the carburetor, we've also changed out the throttle linkage. So now, through all of that, we've decided to go back with the original stock carburetor setup and throttle linkage, and I'm gonna have to reinstall all those things over again. And now, a word from our sponsors. There comes a time in every N600 owner's journey where eventually you're gonna have to defer to Tim Mings. Tim built the motor in our car to begin with, and he did a great job doing that. So when it came time to rebuild this carburetor, well, we sent it out west to Merciless Mings. He did a beautiful job refreshing this thing, and honestly, once we get it installed, I'm sure this Honda's gonna run perfectly. Thanks, Tim. Thoughts and views of the curb cut are not officially supported or endorsed by Tim Mings. Tim Mings is not affiliated with this channel in any certain way. We're not even too sure if Tim likes this car. All right, so with reinstalling our stock carburetor, we're reinstalling the stock throttle cable. The one that originally came on the car had been cut out 6 months ago now. Went through other throttle cable setups with the other carburetors, and now we're returning to stock, all right? The problem we're having, which is probably the reason you're watching this video, is with our throttle cable ends. See, this sheathing and the length and everything's correct on this throttle cable. But in order to get it installed, it has to pass through a very narrow hole in our firewall, thusly using these little stoppers to have everything positioned correctly, and everything's gonna line up correctly with the carburetor on the engine. In order to install this, we're gonna have to cut one of these throttle cable ends off to have it pass through the chassis safely, and then put a new one on. And we're about to show you how to do that. So the first thing we're gonna do is install our throttle cable to the firewall, okay? And then we're gonna send the cable itself through the sheathing and create our new throttle cable end in the engine bay. So now comes time to cast your cable end. Get yourself a healthy piece of wood, like the butt end of a 2x4 or something, some leaded electrical solder, and a torch. Also, find yourself a drill bit that corresponds to the size of the throttle linkage on your carb, and sew the same with the bit that matches the thickness of your cable. Then you're gonna take your 2x4 and drill only as far as the linkage requires. You can measure this with tape on your drill bit. Next, drill a cable hole into the middle of that recess from the side. Then if things aren't seeming obvious at this point, pass your cable into the chamber you just drilled in your wood, load it up with lead, and melt that shit onto the cable. And there you go. Now all you have to do is free it from the wood. Go grab a file, make it look nice, and you're done. All right, we got our throttle cable in with brand new ends. All we gotta do now is start this thing. But not in this video. That's what our next video is for. Us finally starting this Honda N600. We taught you how to make throttle cable ends, and that's what we're here for. We're here to help. We'll see you next time.